Okay, so let's continue with NorCal and the wage gap.
And the fact that, and this is one of those things that the men's rights movement and groups like that don't typically, and when a lot of anarcho-capitalists tend to argue against, is that they seem to argue against why women should get paid more, because they assume that they're getting paid, that they're assuming that they work less.
Okay, so let's examine the average working day for a man and an average working day for a woman. So, first of all, and this is coming from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics from 2014, so it's recent statistics and reliable statistics. So let's start with the average weekday for full-time work. For a man, it is 8.9. For a woman, it is 8.2. So 0.7% less. If we look at part-time work, once again, the average weekday, for men it is 5.9, and for women it is 5.7. So when you get to part-time work, men and women are far closer together. Okay, so once again, let's look at full-time work, the average Saturday, Sunday and holidays. Obviously, on those days you will be earning more money than if you were working on a weekday. So for men, the average is 6.1, and the equivalent for women is 5.2, so 0.9% less. So if we look at the totals altogether, for men, the average day is 8.1, and the equivalent for women is 7.3, so 0.8%. So there is no dispute that men, on average, work more than women. Now, once again, this is that magical word, on average. That doesn't mean every single man works longer than every single woman, but if you add up all the men and all the hours they work, and you compare it to all the women and all the hours they work, in every single category, even part-time work, men work longer hours. This is not in dispute, okay? This is a fact.
And that's just not true. Women actually are working the same amount of hours and the same amount for the, they're working for the same amount of hours, but yet they are actually being, their wages are actually being garnished, I guess is the word, and they are actually getting paid less on the dollar.
Nope. Paying a woman less money per hour for the same work based on her gender has been illegal for 50 years. That's not how the wage gap is calculated.
And basically they in some ways they almost have this propensity towards saying that women should be getting paid 77 cents to every dollar a man earns, and blah blah blah.
I can honestly say I've never heard any men's rights activist anywhere ever claim that women should be paid less than men for exactly the same work. And if I ever did hear an MRA say such things, I would be the first one to criticise them.
So it's one of those things where it really kind of frosts me that they bring up this argument saying that women work less, that they don't do as much dangerous work, so why should they get paid more? Again, straw man, also very anarcho-capitalist sort of statement.
Oh, jeez. No, it's life choices. Women typically choose to work less hours and spend more time with their kids, and they tend to be happier for it. And personally, I think men should start taking note to the way women live their life, and maybe emulate that a bit more. Less work, more time with family. I think that would be healthier for a lot of men. Maybe we could get the male suicide rate down a bit that way. Maybe that's a factor. But there's a trade-off for that. If you choose to spend more time with your family and less time working, then you're going to earn less money. So you have to decide what's more important for you. Is it more family time or is it more work time? Now, at the moment, the expectation is still that the man should be the provider for the family. And how successful a man is seen, not only by other men, but by women as well, tends to be how successful he is at work and how successful he is as a provider. Someone in a high-paying job will have more mating options than someone who stacks shelves in a supermarket at night, or someone who's unemployed, for example. In fact, those men are often called losers. So it's not surprising that men have the drive to work longer hours, because that way they're seen as more successful. Plus, men can't have babies. So if you're going to start a family, at least some of the time your wife is going to be off work.
And it's a very horrid and very, just it's a very horrid and very hollow statement, argument to make, because they don't really tend to think in that favor that there's actually a lot more women than they actually acknowledge that are actually working the same amount of hours, even working overtime, whereas their male counterparts might work the standard 8-hour shift or something like that, but yet the woman is still earning less. I think that's a bunch of horse shit. Or a woman working in an office should be paid equally with a male coal miner. Again, that's I would kind of call that a bit of I would consider that a bit of a off-color sort of thing, because one is not the same as the other. It's one of those things where I would bring up the Sesame Street argument here, where it's like one of these things just doesn't belong here.
Yeah, that was exactly the point. The wage gap is calculated by adding all male wages together and then comparing them to all female wages, regardless of occupation, regardless of hours worked. It doesn't take these things into consideration, which is why it's bullshit. To see if there is actual discrimination, you need to compare the hourly wage of a female worker to a male worker, both with exactly the same experience, both with exactly the same qualification, working for the same company. Now, if one is getting paid less, then that is discrimination. But that is not how the wage gap is calculated. And that's why it's bullshit.
And technically, yes, especially if the woman has a higher education. In fact, I would also make that argument as well when it comes down to the women that are earning less. A lot of them also have a higher education than their male counterparts and are still earning less. So the fact that, and I don't want to sound off key here, but the male coal miner who may have less of an education than the female office worker, yes, the female office worker should be getting paid, relatively. She should be getting paid more. Let's put it up this way.
You're not fucking serious, are you? How likely are you to fucking die in an office? Seriously. Are there a lot of people dying from paper cuts in offices? Fucking unbelievable. Absolutely fucking unbelievable.
If she's, I think that they should be. It's a horrid argument, because a coal miner typically is going to earn less than an office worker. In fact, I don't know if you actually seem to know how much that these people actually earn, but a coal miner does not. It pays okay, but it does not pay well.
Well, okay, let's have a look at the average salary of an American coal miner and compare it to the average salary of the average worker. So the average wage for all US coal miners is $82,000 a year, whereas the average wage for all US workers is $49,700 a year. So on average, the coal miners earn more. Now obviously there may be some people in some offices who have special skills or special qualifications that make them earn more money, you know, especially if you're in management or something like that. But your average office worker is not going to earn, on average, $82,000 a year. Note that magical word once again, on average.
Whereas an office worker, it really depends on what type of office work you're talking about. Because, so I really can't answer that particular argument because it's just so. That one's a red herring. That one just right there. That is a distraction from anything else.
This week we heard over and over again from the White House, from members of Congress, from journalists, that women earn 23 cents less than men for doing the same work.
On average, a woman still earns just 77 cents for every dollar a man does.
And today Congress argued over a bill called the Paycheck Fairness Act. And that bill is premised on this 23-cent wage gap injustice. Well, let's do a little reality check. First of all, no competent labor economist takes the 23-cent wage gap injustice claim seriously. There was an analysis of more than 50 peer-reviewed papers commissioned by the Department of Labor. What they found is that the so-called wage gap is mostly, perhaps entirely, an artifact of the different choices men and women make, different fields of study, different professions, different balances between home and work. Now, wage gap activists will argue that even when you control for relevant variables, women still earn less. Well, it always turns out they omit one or two crucial variables. So why play this game?